Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be our first lesson in mixing our paints, as well as probably doing one of our painting techniques. So if you guys can see, I've already mixed, just making sure you guys can see. Yeah, I've already mixed a couple paints over here, but I saved one paint to mix with you guys. So I am mixing large batches of paint. These are just little condiment bottles from the dollar store. You don't have to mix it like this. I can show you how I mix them one cup at a time, but I do recommend learning how to mix large batches. I am just continuing to learn how to do it, so yeah, learn it earlier. So I have a kitchen scale, and honestly, you don't have to have a kitchen scale. The ratio I'm using right now, whether it's with Floetrol or Glue All, I'm using Floetrol right now. If you do want to see the exact step-by-step, it is pretty much the same, but leave a comment down below and I can film a video of me mixing the Glue All and paint. But the ratio that you want to start with varies depending on whether it's like a Craft Smart paint or this Flow Acrylic, which is the one I'm going to be using. So with the Flow Acrylic, I normally end up using 2 parts Floetrol to 1 part paint. And on my kitchen scale, I'll just fill the Floetrol up to 10 fluid ounces, and then I will put in the blue to 5 fluid ounces. So in total I'll have like 15 fluid ounces. That's how I'm making these large batches. And then if it's in a cup, I would do the same thing, but obviously in smaller proportions. Now, I do eyeball it normally when it's in a cup, and I will fill Floetrol up to about here, and then just a little bit of paint. I know, you know, that's not the best example for someone who really likes math, but this is a channel where math is the enemy. So right now I am filling up my bottle to 6 fluid ounces because this container, the condiment container, will not hold 15 fluid ounces. So I have 6 fluid ounces of Floetrol, and then I'm going to take my blue paint and I'm just going to slowly, add it in there until it's roughly at 9. Now it is somewhat hard to show how you mix paint because you do tend to use a lot of just eyeballing it or listening to what the paint sounds like in a container or in a cup to kind of know if you have the right amount or not. Let's get that in there. But I'm doing my best. I've tried to watch a bunch of videos to show how to explain it, so hopefully we're working it out. But yeah, definitely I would go slow when adding the Floetrol if it's your first time mixing, because you're not gonna know if your paint is inherently thin or inherently thick. With me, I've done, well, not only have I worked with the Flow Acrylic for a while, but I also have 6 other bottles that I've been mixing. So by now I kind of know Flow Acrylic, 1 part Flow Acrylic to 2 parts Floetrol, and a little bit of water is kind of my best bet. So I just shook that up. I didn't shake it up a lot because I don't want to be sitting here shaking this bottle over and over. But now I can either add some filtered water. You want to use filtered water because tap water can have different bacteria and spores that can eventually grow yucky stuff on your paint. Or what I've been doing is I've been using a Floetrol water solution. It is 90% Floetrol to 10% water. This way I know I'm not going to add too much water. So if I get a little heavy-handed with it, it's mostly just me using Floetrol. Okay, so I'm going to shake this up again. Now see, I can tell that this sounds pretty much like all my other bottles, and they were roughly the right consistency, but we can pour a little bit into a cup, and then I can check the consistency for myself. Okay, so it's a little thick, but I'm okay with that because I didn't mix it as well as I wanted to. Let me get over here. Let me see if I can show you this. If you can see, it flows off my stick. It's not the best flow. It could be a thinner, but I'm okay starting out a little bit thick because when I go to use these paints, I always double check. And if they need to be altered a little bit, I just have my Floetrol in water. So I'm gonna pour this back. Oops, and it does get messy. I normally have funnels, but it's okay. And I'll just set this to the side. Okay, so that was me mixing a larger batch. And then I put it in the cup for you. I'm real quickly just going to show you how I would mix in just a cup through eyesight. Because like I said, honestly, you're just going to sort of figure out how you want your paint to feel and look. Especially once you use that mixture the first time. And I would definitely recommend remembering what mixture you use. But when you use that mixture the first time and you're like, oh dang, this made a nice painting. That's normally the mixture you want to stay with because it's probably not too thin or not too thick. And it's all about experimenting. That is what I love about fluid art. It's literally just experimenting. Okay. So I estimated that this was about half of the cup. I'm going to take my blue. And you can either use the ridges on the sides of these cups, or just like I said, your intuition. Or again, you can just use your kitchen scale every single time to guess what is about a third of the Floetrol in your cup. So if you're not shaking, this is how you would mix your paint. This is probably the longest process. I think it's taken me a little over 45, 50 minutes to mix all these paints, and I only mixed 5 colors. And I was doing it the super fast way by mixing them in batches where I didn't have to physically stir. Okay, so right now what I see in this cup, I'm going to show you. If you can see that, I see it flowing easy, but I would like it a little bit thinner. So I'm going to take my Floetrol and water. I'm just gonna put a good amount in there. And like I said, you can just use bottled water and very slowly with water, just dribble some in. I like to use the Floetrol in water because, like I said, it really prevents me most of the time from putting in too much water versus Floetrol. Okay, now this is the consistency I like, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. So it's almost like a warm syrup. It's a bit on the thicker side of warm syrup, but I am okay with that. I rather work with a little bit thicker paint than thinner, because thinner normally doesn't stick on your board as well. But this is all personal preference. Okay, so we have our paints mixed. Off camera, so we mixed blue together, and then off camera I mixed yellow, red, and then I always use more of white and black than any other color. So we mixed our black, our white, and see this, I just reused this paint bottle. So those are our primary colors, our white and our black. I'm gonna let these sit for a couple hours. You don't have to, but I've heard people say that like it helps the Floetrol and paint mix together better. It gets rid of bubbles, which is a chemical reaction between the Floetrol, the paint, the water, everything you put together, and it just lets your paint settle. And what's great is the Floetrol is an extender, so you're not going to have any problems with it drying up. If you are using glue-all, I have never let glue-all sit. Glue-all is a bit more gummy and it's a bit thicker than Floetrol. So if you're nervous about that, you can immediately use your paints, or just when you come back to them, check the consistency again to make sure that the glue-all hasn't changed the consistency from what you mixed it in the beginning. So I don't know why I'm tucking my chair in. So we're going to come back in a little bit, and we are going to do our first pour. Alright, we're back. So the paints have sat for a little bit. If you hear noise in the background, that's just my fiance making some food for our birdo. So the first technique we're going to learn is probably my favorite, and also honestly one of the easiest and messiest, and just it gets you warmed up and kind of in the mood to create more paintings. I don't know, it's a very fun method. So this is going to be dirty pouring. I have my 8x8 canvas board. I just have it lifted on a cup. Let me make sure that's still in frame, because I want you guys to be able to see all of that. Okay, so what we need are some cups. I have these Dixie cups. If I was working with a larger canvas, I would probably use some of these cups. There are charts online you can find where people have already done the math for you to figure out how much paint goes on each canvas. So an 8x8, I believe they say it's about 2 to 3 ounces. I really don't worry about stuff like that. I probably should, but I don't. But if you want to, you're more than welcome to go look up those charts. I might even be able to provide a couple of links in the description below. So I'm pretty level. I'm not like, let me see. Board's level-ish. It's level enough. Okay, so for dirty pours, we have a cup, we have our paints, and we're just gonna start putting them in. So I'm gonna do this first round without measuring my paints. Oh, there's my bird. I'm gonna do this first round without measuring my, checking my paints to make sure they're thick or thin. I don't know, I'm experimenting. I definitely encourage you to experiment with everything you do. Thank you, Cody. He's coming get my bird. Okay. All right, so we added some white, and then I'm gonna do some red. Now, so there's a couple of things I want to talk about with dirty pours. So if you just spray your paint in the center, you're going to mix your paints. They're going to drop down and mix together. If you don't want that, you can actually just apply the paint slowly to the side. And this way, if you can see in there, our paints are not mixing together. They're kind of sitting on top of each other, but I want the paints to mix together because I'm using primary colors and I kind of want them to mix. I also have one of these puppy pads underneath me. I just got a pack at the dollar store. And I'm just kind of creating a pattern. You can do 1 layer, 2 layers. I'm trying 3 layers. And I'm just adding all of my colors right now. Okay, so flip cups. And this doesn't have silicone in it. This is just paint. So some people will actually take a flip cup and toss it. I have never perfected that. I'm actually gonna lift the board up and then put my cup over like that. And then I'm gonna let it rest because I want everything to settle to the bottom. I'm gonna make sure you guys are in so you can see what happens. Okay. Now, there are a couple of other things you can do. You can have your entire board coated with paint. Previously, before you apply the flip cup, this is just going to help everything flow and give you some negative space. You can also flood paint around your flip cup like I'm doing with this white. You would obviously add a lot more, and that's just kind of going to help the paint flow if you don't know if you have enough paint or not. I'm pretty much just going to do a normal flip cup, although I did add that ring of white. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to lift the cup up and pull to the side. I'm just going to tap out some excess and see with flow. Oops, that was a mistake. I didn't mean to do that, but it's fine. So see, with Floetrol and water, you're going to get those cells no matter what. I'll bring you guys down for a closer view eventually. So on top of, you can add silicone, you can also take your torch and torch off some of these bubbles. For this first painting, we're not going to torch, we're just going to see what this looks like. So now we want to get our paint around the board, so we're going to tip it. I'm just taking the weight of the paint and moving it around the board. I like to coat the first intersection before I move the weight of the paint back to the center and go towards the edges. And this is where it gets a bit messy, but that's okay. Here, let me rotate it. That's okay, that's what's fun about this. And as you can see, I added white and black, so that's gonna give me some lighter spots and some darker spots, which I think will look pretty interesting. And tipping, people always want to tip really fast to hurry up and see what pops up. I just tip slowly. It's part of the process, and I think it's super pretty. Okay, so all of my edges, if I had like a thicker canvas, I would make sure all of my edges were covered, but I just have canvas board, so I don't really have to worry about that. And I'm just kind of bringing the weight of the paint back to the center. So my colors muddied a bit more than I wanted them to, but that's fine because we are just experimenting right now. I think I'm gonna do another one with a little less paint and a little less layering because I think the layering made it look muddy. I'm gonna set this one over to the side, and at the end of the video, we'll come down for a close look. All right, we have another board, and this time I'm gonna show you how we can flood the canvas. So I have a popsicle stick, and I have my white paint. I'm just gonna put some white paint on the board, or the canvas, or whatever you're working with, and I'm just gonna coat the entire canvas with the white paint. And this time, why don't we try some silicone just so you can see the difference. So what I would do is I would take my cup, my silicone, I'm gonna add like 2 drops between every layer. So I think I'm just gonna go for like a lighter picture. So I'm just gonna do white. Let's do silicone every 2 layers. So I'm gonna do white and then red, and then I'm gonna add some silicone, and then I'll do, let's do blue on top of red. Blue, oops, that's fine. Oh no. Yellow, and then add some silicone. And then we'll do some more white. All right, and that's our cup. And if you can see, we are already getting cells in that cup. All right, so this one I have to flip it over because I've already flooded the canvas, so hey, nice, that's not too bad. So I'm gonna let all of that settle to the bottom. I still do like to add a little bit of paint around the edge of my flip cup just so it gets like a good start. You don't have to, you can try and experiment. That's what this is all about. Okay. All right. So I'm just gonna pull to the side. And if you can see all of those cells just popping up. Now I'm also going to introduce the torch. If you don't have a torch, I have started before with a barbecue lighter. And what the torch is basically doing is it's heating the silicone and taking it away from the painting to help produce more cells. So this one, I'm not going to do around and around. I'm just going to take the paint off the board. Now see, like I said, I haven't worked with just primary colors before, so this is an experiment for me just as much as it is for you guys. The method is the same no matter what what color combination you use. It's all the same basic principle, right? And then we're going to move the weight of the paint back to the center. Make sure everything's covered. And then I do one more quick pass through. You want to keep the heat moving, because if you don't, you're going to get clusters of really intense cells, and you're also just going to burn your paint. Okay, so that's our second one. We're going to do one more because I want to do a double flip cup. So we're going to move this off to the side. All right, and we're going to do one more. All right, so I got my board. I'm going to get 2 cups. And I think I'm going to do alternating colors, and we're not going to do silicone. And I think I kind of like adding darkness, so I think we're going to do a white at the bottom. And then we will do a red. And you know what? I think I'm also going to tilt some of these to the side so we're not getting like a huge mixture of our colors. Hopefully they'll just mix on their own. Okay. And then we'll do some black in the center to maybe make sure it gets through all those colors. All right, so I'm going to attempt to flip these. Ooh. Close enough. All right. So I would say for an 8x8, these Dixie cups are working pretty well. I'm not going to put white around the cups, but I am going to put some white just on the corners, because the corners, especially with squares, are always hard to get. So I'm just going to have some white around there. All right, so I'm going to pull this one up. Pull this one down. Doesn't matter. If I had a bigger canvas, I could probably make drag lines up and down. And then we're gonna forego the heat. Oh, I think this is so pretty. Sometimes I wish I could just capture this without having to tilt, but I do need to tilt just a bit. All right, so there is an owl outside that is just going ham. Now, because there were 2 cups, there's almost like this little merge line. That's okay. I don't mind. Oi, Gus. Yucky. Sorry, my dog somehow found a toilet paper roll. Did I mention that I live willingly in a zoo? Okay. We're going to go to this other side. And I believe I talked in my supply video about these Michael boards and not having used these canvas boards before. So far, they're performing a lot better than... Oh, I really like this. Hold on, let me wipe my fingers. They're performing a lot better than the dollar store boards. So I actually think, because Michael's is having a sale, I think it's their after 4th of July sale. Also, what I'm doing is I'm just taking this popsicle stick and I'm going under the board, because any little drips, any little drips that are under this board are going to continue to drag your paint. So you just want to kind of get those. Oh! See? If you're clumsy, yikes. It's okay. Any of those drips are going to drag your paint down. All right, no problem. I'm just going to fix that by tilting a little bit more over here to cover that corner. I am such a butterfingers, and if you are too, this is an amazing art form, because you know what? It's very forgiving. Okay. Oh, I absolutely love how this one turned out. I think this is this is definitely my favorite so far. Okay, I'm not going to touch it. Another rule of thumb, if it looks okay or if it looks good, don't touch it. You're not going to make it great by fiddling with it. All right, so let me take you down off of there, and we're going to look at our paintings for a couple of different dirty pour methods that I use. I'm not saying that this is every single dirty pour method out there. That would take forever. These are just some I've practiced and experimented with. Okay, so here's the first one we did. This was just our dirty pour with a couple layers and no silicone. As you can see, we have cells that formed just from the Floetrol alone. It did get a little muddy, but I think that's because I just did like 3 layer upon layer upon layers. This was our second one with the silicone. And you know, I don't know. I honestly prefer how the Floetrol creates cells more than the silicone. But these are our 2. And this is my favorite. This is the 1 layer, no silicone, no heat, 2 cups. Thank you guys so much for watching my first pouring video. There are going to be so many more in the series, and until next time, please like, share, subscribe, and leave in the comments below anything you'd like to see from my channel pouring wise. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!